My favorite miter saw that I have had has been the Capex. It was one of those tools that I drooled over for a long time, and I know that people have had issues with them with the motors. I've owned it for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. It's still the same saw, and I truly, absolutely love it every time I get it out. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am here with another episode of Midweek Modern Craftsman. Hopefully, you guys are having a good week. Mine's off to a pretty good start. I was away last week. We recorded an episode, I guess, 2 weeks ago. Um, got back into the swing of things. It's been crazy. It's been busy getting back up and running. It's always difficult leaving before vacation and getting back. When I got back, I decided to treat myself to a coffee maker based on the recommendation of Chris Murray. So I looked it up here. Let me see. Picked up. So right now, my wife and I are making pour over coffee, and I like to pour over coffee, but it doesn't stay warm for very long in the glass carafe, and it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to make. First pot's not bad. Second pot takes a while, and you're ready for coffee before it's ready. So I ended up, based on Chris's recommendation, getting a Mocha Master. Also, my buddy Tom, we were over at his brother's house and he had the same thing. So I spoke to him about it, and we got the KBGV Select. Essentially, it's a pour over machine, so you can set it up. It'll brew the entire pot. You can do half pots, full pots, but it makes pour over. It keeps the pour over warm. It's very fast. It's more automated. It's not set it the night before. But you can have everything set up and then just push the on button in the morning. So I did that along with the coffee that I got from Steven from Coffee Cult, which came last week. I didn't speak with my UPS driver to ask him how great his truck smelled with the coffee in it. But I'll tell you what, my house smells good with the coffee in it. So thanks to both of them. Thanks to Chris for the recommendation. He actually said he's going to send me some beans, which I'm pumped about. And thank you to Steven. I'm just not going to attempt your last name until you send me an email with how to pronounce it. But Stephen up in Greenwich, Connecticut, thank you for the coffee beans. I appreciate it. I'm actually enjoying some coffee right now that I made this morning. So it doesn't get better than that. And I'm not pinging my wife on her phone that I used her Starbucks account to buy coffee. Other thing I have going on this week is last night, I didn't even realize this till my wife said something this morning, and now I'm looking at the video of myself, but I have a huge scab on my lip, and I thought that I had cut it, but then I realized what I did. I pulled the liner out of my dirt bike helmet last week to wash it. Just I'll do it every couple of months, and it had fallen apart a little bit. And so I super glued the parts back together, and I must have gotten super glue on my finger and then on my lip and just ripped part of the skin of my lip off. And I didn't realize it was as bad as it is. She said something this morning, but I haven't really spent too much time looking in the mirror. I didn't realize it was as bad as it is until I'm seeing this video of myself right now with a scab. Um, so that's pretty much my briefing for this pre-blog, pre-podcast episode. I elected this week to fill you all in on and catch up on my trip with Doug from Motif and Ken from Materia out to the Festool product launch that we went to a few weeks ago. I wanted to give them some time. There were some products that they hadn't released any information on. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't interfering or stepping on toes speaking about some of these products. I'm not going to go into everything that we saw and everything that I looked at. Some some tools were applicable to me, some aren't. I think that that's pretty typical with these things. But I guess it was probably 3 weeks ago, Doug and I went out to the event. It was in Lebanon, Indianapolis. I had not been out there. It was a nice area. Didn't really get to see too much. Fly in, fly out. I did go for a run there, and I've never seen soil with such intense clay. I ended up off the road at one point, and I stepped in some what I thought was mud. And when I got back on the pavement, my feet felt heavier. So I looked down at my feet, and my shoes had a halo of mud around them that I tried to stomp off. It wouldn't come off, it was stuck to my shoes. I kept on trying to stomp them, and I couldn't make it happen. So when I got back to the hotel room, I got up to my room. I figured, all right, I'll let it sit on there and I'll let it dry and then I'll just knock it off. Well, hours and hours later, it was still the same sticky, tough, hard consistency. Not hard, dry, just hard, dense that it was when I stepped in it. So I ended up having to scrape it all off of my shoes to be able to put them in my suitcase to fly home. So congratulations to Indianapolis. You win the most disgusting, intense clay soil award that I've ever experienced. Not that my experience is that vast or comprehensive, but that was a first for me to not be able to stomp mud off of my shoes. So, the Festool event, I was invited out. There was a pretty small group of people. They invited some builders, some makers out there just to check out some new tools that they were launching, primarily cordless tools. There's a big push for the cordless market right now. Full disclosure, I use cordless tools for the typical cordless tools, screw guns, impact guns, some sawzalls, jigsaws, handheld routers. I don't own any larger cordless tools. Most of my jobs I'm set up on, I have electricity. I have cords, and for me to have a cordless charger plugged in to charge the batteries is about the same as having the tool plugged in. So it's never really something I've considered. And going into this, I didn't really give it much consideration, and I didn't really know what they were going to be showcasing. But it was a good trip. I enjoyed it, and I may have changed my mind with regard to some tools. But I used to hate these trips just because I didn't love flying. I didn't like traveling. It pulled me away from work, and with all the traveling I was doing, I'm sure you guys understand I was apprehensive and a little bit um, stressed about going on this trip. But what I forgot is that I am a professional plane sleeper. And also, when my children are not home, I have a lot of free time that I don't know what to do with myself. And it's very relaxing. So, thank you to Festool for allowing me extra sleep, some meals alone, and some bedtime alone. It is more and more appreciated these days, and I have a newfound sense of appreciation for these trips because it's the only time I get to have alone without two dogs, a cat, two daughters, and a wife. So hopefully they're not listening to this. Got me away from work for a little bit, which is always nice. Hopefully my customers aren't listening to this. But a little about the event. A lot of times these companies have these events, and it's to showcase their new tools, their new technology. It's a bit of a marketing exercise for them. You know, you're going to come out, you're going to document your experience, document the tools, and then put out content around that. Um, I'm not going to dump a ton into social. It'll go through my Modern Craftsman channel, through this blog post, and I think that I'll cover everything in my opinion of everything on here. This isn't really a product pitch. I have a ton of Festool tools. I've worked with them for years, and I appreciate the company, their innovation, their tools have held up very well for me. I would say that out of all the tools that I've purchased, um, or have been given in exchange for creating content for them, which actually isn't a lot. Most of my Festool tools I purchased, but out of all those tools, there might be two that I don't think I would buy again. Meaning if they broke tomorrow, I would not think twice. I'd just purchase a new one. But they have their tools hold up well. They generally are not breaking on me. If they do break, they have a great warranty. department that they turn tools around. We actually toured that when we were there, but they will turn once you get the tools out to them, they'll turn the tools around typically in a day or two. They keep all parts on in stock that they can get your tools fixed right back to you. Their warranty is pretty comprehensive and pretty long. So a lot of times, if it's within the first few years of buying that tool, you're not paying for returns. But they do keep parts on board for I'm I don't know that, don't quote me on this, but it's something akin to 10 years after they suspend production of a tool that they will keep those parts on stock to be able to maintain tools if they break. So that's something to consider. You're investing in tools. If they do stop producing the tool or come out with a new product, a newer generation of that product, they will still keep those parts in stock to be able to repair your tool and get it back to you. So that's something that I've always liked about them. But their tools hold up well. They're expensive. You pay for a warranty, you pay for service, you pay for quality and accuracy, and I've always found that to be the case. So I enjoy their tools. I'm not paid to do this. It's just a review of what I experienced at this event, and I hope that it brings you guys some value and you see what's coming out on the horizon. Um, as always with these events, you're there for the tools, but I think that the biggest takeaway is the people who are there, meeting the people who work for Festool. I got to meet Maya, who is my rep, my point of contact with Festool over the past couple of years, and I've never met her in person. So it was nice to meet her in person and put a face to a name. She's helped me out a lot with questions and putting me in contact with who I need. So it was great to meet her, and then meet everyone else who was there. It was a pretty small group, so there were some contractors, some builders, some makers, but it was a pretty tight knit group. But getting to meet them, hear their story, just talk shop with them is beneficial to me, if not more beneficial than getting to see these tools and get my hands on the tools. It comes down to the people, and for me, that's worth its weight in gold. So it was nice to meet everyone. I met past podcast hosts or guests. I met people who are going to be on the podcast shortly. I've met people that I've dealt with behind the scenes for years. So it was a nice trip, and I enjoyed everything that I saw and the people, and I got some alone time, and I caught up on some sleep. So thank you to Festool for getting me out there. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the next one. So on to the tools. Hopefully that's what you guys are here for. I'm a big tool guy. No, I'm not really. I mean, I like tools, but I'm not generally creating content around tools. But I like Festool, and I like a few things that I saw. So I'm going to go over those few things. To me, the number when I think of myself and I think of a carpenter and I think of my most valuable and cherished tool, take put aside the tools, the belt, the hammer, the hand plane that you've had or was bestowed upon you from a grandfather 2 generations ago. Just day to day, what would be the tool in my arsenal that I couldn't live without, and it's a quality miter saw. And full transparency, my favorite miter saw that I have had has been the Capex. It was one of those tools that I drooled over for a long time, and I know that people have had issues with them with the motors. Um, I've had good luck with mine. I've taken care of it. I've ran it the way that it's supposed to be run. It's not a production saw. It's definitely a trim saw. It's a specialty saw. And when used the way that it's meant to be used, it holds up well and it's very accurate. And it's expensive, but I'm not sure that people are putting out a better saw than that right now. There are less expensive saws. There may be saws with a better value, but when it comes to me needing accuracy, dependability, and a saw that's just going to make me smile when I'm using it. It truly is the Capex. That's full honest disclosure, full transparency. That's how I feel about that saw. I've owned it for I don't know, 7 or 8 years. It's still the same saw, and I truly, absolutely love it every time I get it out. But, my secondary saw that I keep in my van, I have a small LS0714 Makita that is older than my Capex. It's when I first went into business, I was working out of a small pickup truck, and I didn't have space for a larger saw in there, so I kept that saw, and I really like that saw. It's very accurate, older technology, very mechanical, corded, very light. You could pull it out with one hand, set it up, but it's older now. It's tired. I've retuned it and calibrated it many times, but every time I walk into my truck, I think, it might be time for a new one, but I have a lot of experience with that saw and there's sentimental value there, so it remains in my truck. And I had considered for a long time just getting a new saw, but honestly, it is not it's not as convenient as I thought now that I see the cordless miter saw that Festool is putting out. It's the KSC 60. I'm noticing a typo right now. It's the KSC 60, and thinking to myself, a smaller miter saw that's cordless, that still has a good capacity. It can bevel left and right. The Makita only bevels to one side. It has a 60-degree miter capacity from each side, which I believe is more than my standard Capex. One side it bevels more, or it miters more than the other. But I realized that that would actually be very convenient. And there's a lot of times that I would use that saw over my main Capex because of the cordless um, platform there, that I don't need a cord, that I could pull it out on my truck, make a cut, and put it back. Excuse me. So I never really considered using a cordless miter saw until I saw this and my wheels started turning. So I use the saw. It has good power. It's accurate. It feels solid. It cut well and it felt powerful. And one thing, I have a handful of cordless drills and impact guns, and I have always been impressed with how well their batteries last. And the Festool isn't my main cordless platform. Generally, I'm running Makita, but I have some drills that I keep in my shop, and I use the CXS that's on my truck every day. But drills and impact guns that I use in my shop, and the batteries last forever and they charge really quickly. So the cordless platform that they put out is robust, and with the saw, the batteries definitely hold up. A lot of issues I've had with other cordless brands is the batteries don't hold up. They don't hold a charge long. They lose power quickly, and you're constantly recharging them. And to me, it's at what cost? Yeah, if I'm constantly switching batteries or having to stop a cut and switch batteries in between, I'd rather just have something corded. I still need a battery charger. I still need to be shuffling batteries around, which worried about which ones are charged. So that's nice that the Festool battery system charges very quickly and holds a charge long, because on a tool like this, I want it to be out there for ease of use and convenience and portability. And if I constantly have to worry about batteries, it's not worth it to me. So I'd love to put this saw in my quiver, so to speak. Hopefully, I can get my hands on one soon and really put it through the paces. If it's anything like my original Capex, I'm sure I'll be thrilled. So we'll see what'll happen with that, but keep your eyes out for that. It is a cordless sliding compound miter saw. Again, to me, that's kind of the tool that defines a carpenter, especially a finished carpenter, and I'm excited about that one. The next tool is actually the first tool that I saw that I might be the most excited about, even though I wouldn't use it as much as my miter saw. The first track saw the only track saws I've ever had are a Festool, and I remember buying that and the investment and immediately putting it to use and being so pumped about how easy it was to use a track saw, because I didn't have a shop at that point. I was building a lot of stuff on site. It hooks up to the dust extractor. It's accurate. You don't get a ton of tear out. You can leave all of your boards or all of your sheet goods on a table and bring the saw to the table rather than, excuse me, Oh, I got tired all of a sudden. Having to move your sheet around and then worry about hanging a 4x8 sheet off of a job site portable table saw. So the especially working by myself a lot, the track saw really changed the way that I do work. And I've loved it. I'm on my second track saw now. Both are Festool. I love both of them, have no issues with them. They're both in regular use. One's in the shop, one's in my truck. But you will experience tear out with a track saw. The way that it works, the track has a zero clearance replaceable plastic um, guide on it that sticks out past the aluminum. When you set the saw and cut it, it cuts the initial plastic that's left proud and long to the basically where the blade hits it, and that's now your zero clearance. So when you put two tick marks on a board, you line up the plastic to that. It's very accurate. It's very easy. Again, it saves you the trouble of wielding these large 4x8 sheets, and the dust extraction's good on them. And I feel they're fairly safe. But cross cutting, and a lot of times on the bottom, if you don't have a piece of insulation under there or another piece of scrap wood to back that, you'll get tear out on the bottom. The top, you can get tear out on your offcut because there's nothing keeping those wood fibers down. Still pretty clean, and there's a couple of attachments that you can put on there that will help with that. But you can get tear out in your offcut. There's less tear out underneath the guide rail because the plastic is sitting there holding the wood fibers down. But on really finicky veneers or melamine, it's unavoidable. You need a shop saw, table saw, and a lot of times the production cabinet shops that do a ton of this work have a scoring blade that goes through and scores the melamine, and then their full depth blade comes through, so that at the same time they're cutting and you're not plowing through twice with two different blades or two different passes, creating tear out. So this track saw implements that idea of a scoring blade. So the way that you could check it out online, it's the TSV 60 track saw. But essentially, I don't know how somebody didn't come up with this sooner, because it's a simple idea and it's pretty ingenious. But the front of the saw has a smaller scoring blade that you can adjust the depth of, so how deep you want to cut through that veneer, and also the lateral adjustment to line it up exactly with the other blade and the side of the guide rail. You can also just drop down that saw blade. So if you're looking to do a plunge cut in a board, that saw the um, scoring blades in front of the other blade. So if it's a small plunge cut, you might not want to drop that scoring blade down because it's going to cut past where you're looking to take out. So you can control whether that scoring blade drops down or not. It's not always going down as you use the saw. You can use the saw as a normal track saw too. But the way it works is you set that up the same lateral adjustment as your existing blade. You set the depth of it, and then that blade drops through and scores prior to your main saw blade going through. So it prevents tear out on both sides of the piece that you're cutting, under the track, under the guide rail, and on the offcut. So now you make that cut and you don't need to turn that around and then recut your cut again to have a clean edge. You have a clean edge on both pieces and you can just get right to work. So this for me, especially, I mean, I don't do a ton of melamine and a ton of um, crazy veneers. A lot of our stuff's paint grade, but to be able to cross cut on site or cross cut um, on a table and not have a job site or a cross cut saw is pretty incredible and pretty ingenious, and a pretty simple idea that I'm surprised nobody else has come out with. But I guess it takes time and money to develop these. So this is a saw that I'm really excited about, and it was really cool to see. And definitely, it's an overused term right now, the term game changer. But honestly, for people who do casework and build these type of cabinets, what this is going to allow you to do on site, it's a no brainer to go and buy this saw. um, the what you're going to get out of this versus the cost of that investment, and how much easier this is going to make your life, and how much cleaner your work's going to be, check it out, see what it does. I think that for people who do a ton of that casework or those type of cabinets, it's definitely a tool to look into and possibly invest in. So that's something that I saw that really got me thinking and got me excited. The last one for me, they came out or they're coming out with a portable table saw. And this, I'll be the first to admit that I've harped on there being no need for a cordless table saw. In my mind, when you break out the table saw, it's for long rips, it's for something that another tool can't handle. It's because you have a ton of ripping to do. And to me, in that situation, it's not a tool that you're taking up on a ladder with you. It's not a tool that you have inside when it's a really tight workspace. So I've always just thought to myself, why can't you just run a cord for a table saw? But seeing this saw and how compact it is, and the power that it produces, and the accuracy, the technology, it's not mechanical. A lot of it is it's controlled digitally. Um, so it's excuse me, it's very accurate and it's very neat the way that you control the depth and the cutting angle, and it would alleviate a lot of mistakes as long as the system does not fail, or the software and the not software the uh technology there remains robust and doesn't break down, or um, does not become damaged from day to day use. So, what you're relying on when you go to a digital saw is that it's going to remain accurate, and that the digital aspect of that saw isn't going to break. This is the conversation that we had with them where, hey, right now we're using job site saws. If they gum up or something isn't working on them, we might be able to tap them with a hammer or push them over to where we need them. And this saw doesn't work that way. Um, it's a more advanced setup. A lot of it's digital. So that was a concern for me. What happens in the middle of the day if this is an issue? And the rep who was helping us was pretty confident that the way that the tool is designed and the mechanics of the tool that are operated through the digital end lack a lot. Everything's sealed up, and the gears that drive it are sealed to protect all of the digital end of things. So you're not going to be running into dust getting into areas that they typically do on my other table saw that's gumming them up and creating issues. So he said, somebody who was there asked, in 10 years, what happens if this saw doesn't work? And to be honest, if you get 10 years out of a saw, that's pretty good. So I think that that's somewhat of a non-issue, but I like stuff like that. I like to know that my tools are accurate. I like not having to push a tool over and worry about if it's set into the detent or what angle I'm actually on. Got knocked around in my truck and the calibration of it's off. So this would alleviate all of that when functioning properly. It's very compact. It basically stores very small. You could pop it out of your truck, set it up on a job site. It's not going to have a ton of floor space. So the saw that I use right now is old. It's inexpensive. It's not super powerful. It can't accept a dado blade. It's a older DeWalt. It's a job site saw. It has a pretty good fence, but oftentimes when I need to rip bigger stuff, I have a larger stand that it goes into, an aftermarket stand, and it has an outfeed table and an auxiliary fence. So I lose a lot of the benefits from that saw, but I do gain a capacity, and I gain an ability to rip larger pieces by myself and not have it be a safety issue. But it's a lot of setup, and at times I don't get my table saw out and I make another tool work because I don't feel like spending 15 minutes setting up my table saw or running out to the truck and bringing it. It's not something I can go out and grab in one trip and set it up. It's quite a few trips. I need to find a breaker that's going to be able to sustain. Most of the time, I'm looking to run them on a 20 amp breaker. I have other tools that require a 20 amp breaker in the 100+ year old houses that I work in. A lot of times, finding one 20 amp is difficult enough, let alone finding two. And I don't want to be tripping breakers all day, every day, running down to the basement to reset a breaker. So Having a cordless table saw that has a smaller footprint than my larger setup right now does not require electricity, and I could make one trip out to the truck to come set it up on a job site is somewhat enticing to me. um, the fact that it's cordless for me, um, I would love the ability to plug it in, full transparency, because I think that that's a good option. If you have power there, it would be nice just to plug it in and not have to worry about batteries. But having the ability to run a tool on cordless when you have the battery system set up and the batteries out for other tools would be nice in a lot of situations. A lot of situations, I would go out and I'd grab a portable miter saw that was cordless if I could literally pick it up from my truck, put it on the floor, have it set up, and function. If I had a ton of work to do with the table saw, I'd get out my bigger one. But for the jobs where I need a single rip, where I'm installing cabinets, where I need to do a bulk scribe off of a piece of baseboard, right now, I'm not going out and getting my table saw. I'm typically setting up some sort of unsafe contraption to hold the board and using my track saw to rip it off and then going and back cutting, either with a jigsaw or a plane or my RAS grinder, whatever you use to fine tune your scribes at that point. But I think that I would use this a lot more and probably be a lot safer if I was installing a cabinet set and I had two pieces of baseboard that needed to be scribed to the floor. I would love the ability to pull this out of my truck, set it up on the back of my truck, make two rips, and put it back in. And that would be safer and save me a lot of time. Or set it right up out on the porch. Make my two rips, one trip to get it out, use it, one trip to pack it up and be done with it. Because right now, it's multiple trips. It's finding an electrical cord outside. It's finding a breaker that's 20 amp on their porch that doesn't trip. Um, it's somewhat of a nuisance and a headache right now, which is why a lot of times I figure out how to make the cut that I need to without a table saw. So I think that I would use something like this. So that's another tool to check out by them. It also has a pretty nice little cross cut setup, which is nice. Sometimes you need to trim a small cabinet door or cross cut a piece of plywood, which I typically don't like to do with my setup right now because it's not always flat and the fence is not perfectly square and I don't have a cross cut sled made, so it gets kind of sketchy doing that, especially with longer boards. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Jeez, I got tired. My whole room's black. I feel like I'm ready to fall asleep. But they have pretty nice crosscut sled for this too. So that's a tool to check out. It's the CSC Sys 50 table saw that they are releasing. To me, those are the three tools that I would use the most regularly that kind of excited me for what they do, how they perform, and how they would open up opportunities or efficiencies within my workflow on a daily basis. There are a ton of other tools there, some noise canceling headphones, a new floor grinder, I guess a larger version of the RAS, not for wood, more so for getting rid of thin set and grinding down concrete, which obviously hooking up to a dust extractor is huge. It was very powerful. Um, there were, let's see, a new reciprocating saw. A lot of these tools, I could kind of take it or leave it. For me, if I was fully invested in their cordless platform, it'd be something to consider. But I'm not fully operational on a Festool cordless platform. So while I appreciated them, they weren't screaming to me, "You need this." These other tools are really cool, and I could definitely adopt on a daily basis. So if you're curious as to what else they are releasing soon, hop online, hop on their website. They're pretty good with updating the website as to when things are coming out. Um, so check that out. But again, this event was a good one for me. It was always nice. Doug was there to spend some time with Doug, and we filmed and recorded a podcast with Ken from Materia, next partner up there in the cabinet shop. So it was good to see some old friends, make some new friends, meet a lot of people that I've dealt with for years that I hadn't met in person, and to get away and get some sleep without kids. I had a couple of nice meals by myself. I got to sleep in without anyone coming into my bed in the middle of the night. I generally end up not knowing what to do with myself with my free time. But it was nice. It was a quick trip in and out. I had not been to Indianapolis before. I did not get to see much of Indianapolis before other than the clay and the immediate area which we stayed. But hopefully at some point I can get back out there, spend a little bit more time. But I wanted to give a special thank you out to Maya and the rest of the Festool team for involving me with this and helping me get out there and always answering my questions and taking care of me as needed. Thanks again. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Again, I'm not a massive tool reviewer. Um, I don't, I'm not one to come to figure out. I don't always have my finger on the pulse of the tool world. I think there's other people who do a far better job of that than me. But what you can get from me is an honest, unbiased, authentic opinion of a tool. If I did not see advantages or potential in these tools, I wouldn't talk about them. If I didn't see a place for them within my arsenal, I would not talk about them. I would not purchase them. So I do fully endorse and support the Festool brand. Again, out of all the tools that I purchased from them, there's possibly two that if they broke, I wouldn't purchase again. And I'll tell you what one of them is. The Tryon jigsaw. It's probably the barrel portion of the jigsaw that I bought the barrel type jigsaw after coming off of a standard jigsaw, and I just didn't like it. I couldn't turn it with the way the cord stuck out of the back inside of areas that I wanted to, and I never could get used to it. So what I did is I took that jigsaw and I put a Collins coping foot on it, and now it's just in my coping box with the RAS. So when I go to do trim work, I pull out the coping box, um Tryon Carvex. I think it's a Tryon is the older one. The corded version, but I use that and that's always set up with the Collins coping foot on it. And to be honest, I really like that jigsaw for that. It's very heavy. It's got plenty of power. The ergonomics of it, using it upside down with the way that you can hold it on the barrel end or kind of that nub, that ball that's on the top, I actually do like that. So maybe if it did break, I might actually purchase a new one if you can still purchase that just for coping, but for its normal intended purposes, I couldn't get down with it. But that's probably myself and not Festool's issue. But everything else I've loved. They've held up. They've worked well. I have not, knock on wood. I'm going to go out and all my Festool tools are going to be blown up in my truck. But I haven't had issues, and I use my tools on a daily basis. I take care of them, but I'm not babying them. And it's a brand that I've always enjoyed. They've been great to work with. Everything that I've used of theirs has held up. If I've needed to get it repaired, it's been quick, easy, and very efficient. So again, you're not going to hear of a tool brand or tools that I don't believe in. I'm not going to tell you something's great when it's not. I'm not a tool reviewer. I'm not a product reviewer, but I did want to get a podcast and a blog post out about this experience and these few tools that I was able to get my hands on, that I'm actually pretty excited about. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this podcast. There won't be a ton going down this route or this road. So enjoy this one for what it's worth. Um, if you do want more stuff like this, I could possibly do that, but it's just not an avenue that I've ever really explored. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'd love your feedback, constructive criticism. As always, I appreciate the support. Thank you for all the coffee recommendations, for all the reposts during the week. I know we say this on the normal podcast, but if you have 2 seconds to go on and leave us a review on iTunes, it really helps us. It proves to be very beneficial to our partners and our sponsors. Obviously, always check them out. If you have an opportunity to endorse them or patronize their services and products, please do that, because by them investing in us, they're obviously investing in you, and it'd be very difficult and we'd be hard pressed to do what we do without them. So, if you can show your appreciation to them, check them out. We would appreciate that. And that wraps it up for this week. I will catch you guys on next week's midweek. But as always, I appreciate all of you, and I'll talk to you next week.